Right, this is quite important. So I've actually started to find some parliamentary privilege acts now. It's taken a while to start looking for these because really we were just looking at petitioning and the right to petition and acts about petitioning itself, like the Tumultuous Act. But it does really fall into parliamentary privilege when you're petitioning, which is what Thomas Erskine May, in his book, he says, this is the chapter on petitioning, right? And, he's talking about privilege being applied. But we don't normally think of applying a privilege under that word and term because in the 1688 Bill of Rights, it just says that if you're petitioning, you can't be prosecuted, right? Which is straightforward. To call that parliamentary privilege, it doesn't even do in that act. It just says illegal prosecutions by the King's Bench for matters of Parliament. It doesn't actually call it privilege. But there's also a King James I Act, which says that you have to basically release you can get released from prison. If you've already got a suit that you're pursuing, then you have to get released from prison, right? Particularly if you've already got, a higher jurisdiction or whatever. Now, that was way, way before the 1688 Bill of Rights. So that's actually even relevant to that Edward Vaudrey who was in prison. That Edward Vaudrey who was in prison, and he said that he wanted to be released to pursue his cause, right? To be protected to pursue his cause. Well, that has to be from that James I Privilege Act, which is actually based on Magna Carta, surely. It has to be based on Magna Carta, right? Now, the thing is that this one's on Parliament website, but the first parts of it have been repealed, and I can't find them. They've only left this section 4 in place, right? And I want to see what the first 3 sections were talking about, because it could have been to do with criminal matters or petitioning. It's possible, but I'll explain why this is relevant, right? So this Parliamentary Privilege Act 1737, in this part 4, it says that you cannot be imprisoned for being a king's debtor, right? So this is also in civil matters as well. Now, this is really important because this is why, right, if you owe money to the government, right, or another party, in some of these old petitions that we've now got transcribed, right, people are being arrested by other citizens when they're bringing cases against them, but sometimes civil cases. They're getting the actual citizens are arresting other citizens when they've got a civil suit against them, not just hue and cry with a criminal suit, right? And they're getting the sheriff to lock them up, until they go to court or whatever, if they owe them money or whatever, right? But also if you owe the king the government money, right? Now, think about the ULEZ fines, right? What happens if you refuse to pay the ULEZ fines, right? Like Transport for London, or the Mayor of London, or the King, right? The government, right? Or the council, all this council tax and anything, right? Or if you don't pay, revenue and customs or whatever, right? They send so many letters and then they start increasing the fine more, right? And they get the court action to reclaim it. And then they start sending the bailiffs round, right? I've had the bailiffs here, but from the result of a criminal charge when I got convicted of a driving offence and I refused to pay the money of the fine, right? Because I said that, I couldn't be prosecuted because special reasons, like I was investigating. So, but the bailiffs came round, and they were going to take stuff unless they give them money. But they don't come to imprison you though. This is the thing. If you don't turn up at court for the summons for a criminal matter, right, they'll come around and grab your body, habeas corpus. They'll come and grab your body and they'll take you into court, right? Unless they make an order when you're not there. But usually they like to have you there, right? But they can make an order if you're not there, if it's, like a speeding offence, but usually not. Well, people usually don't bother turning up when they get disqualified on their last one because they've given in 3 times and they just don't bother going in. They should go in to defend yourself, but if you're going to get disqualified, they just don't go in and then they get let through and say you're banned, right? But if it's usually a criminal matter, for example, like dangerous driving or any other offence, right, like criminal damage or whatever, if you don't turn up, they'll come and get you, right? They'll come and get you, right? And they'll lock you up in the cell until you have to go to court or whatever. That's because you've been charged with a criminal offence, right? The police can lock you up when, they're questioning you, or Extinction Rebellion people get locked up and so forth. But we're talking about not if you've necessarily committed a criminal offence, right? If you just owe money to the government for some reason, like you haven't paid a fine, fee or charge or whatever, right? Notice that, like, on Verbs, like, if you watch the Verbs channel, right, I'd probably tag him in this. They came round to take Verbs' car. They came round to like, put a wheel lock on it, and or tow it away or whatever. They tried to take Verbs' car off him, right, because he owed Bristol Council some money and he never paid it and he ignored the letters, right? But they can't take him. They didn't come for him, did they? Right? So, because you can't be arrested for owing the government money, right? It's king's debtors, right? It says here that you can't be arrested or locked up for debts to the king, His Majesty's government, if you see what I mean. But they come and they want the money. If you don't pay the money, though, they come and take your things. But the court can't take your things off you, right? The court can't say, right, you've done this fine, so you'll have to give us your car, or you've done this fine, so you'll have to give us your house, or, there's a 1600s painting in there that the king quite likes and he wants that. Unless it's a felony, right, they can make an order for a specific thing to be taken, right? But if they're meant to only take money from you, right? This is why they're not meant to be able to take in Magna Carta, they can't take your cart and horse because it's your livelihood and you work and you have to work to pay for the fine or you can't give them the money. But they can't take like your job off you and your living, right? This is the thing. They're not going to be able to take your car off you. This is in Magna Carta, but they're claiming they repealed that, but I don't think they have repealed it. But anyway, that's another argument. Now, I don't really think they can take your car off you even if you don't pay the fine, right? But because you don't pay the fine, then the bailiffs apparently can take other things, which that is also questionable, right? But anyway, they don't lock you up, right? And also, if someone takes you to the civil court, right, like the plumber owes Mrs. Johnson £50 because he didn't plumb a kitchen properly and he didn't do the job, and like they say that he owes or whatever. The plumber, right, if you go to the county court, you don't get locked up. And she doesn't go, and the police don't come and arrest him, and then, he's got to go to the court, right? So he doesn't turn up at summons, right? So they stopped people being imprisoned for owing money, if you see what I mean, because they want the money. Right? Not like, so you're only put in prison for criminal, right? Now, you can actually, you can actually appeal to Parliament, or you can appeal up the courts, but you can also petition Parliament. But it's also saying that if you petition Parliament, it doesn't stay the proceedings, right? Now, that's important because you don't really want to stay the proceedings anyway, because you're either appealing higher and you want there to be proceedings, right? Or if you actually are engaged in a proceeding yourself, you need to be able to do that proceeding, or you can't do that, right? This is why MPs can't go into Parliament, right, and do their job if they're locked up, right? This is why they're not locked up during sessions of Parliament, but they can be prosecuted out of it, right? But barons and lords, I thought it was meant to be different, Magna Carta, because some barons and lords are not actually members of Parliament, but they've got a title and they're peers, right? But there is some argument and dispute over that. This is the thing with Jeremy Johnson, KC, what he's arguing about. And then there's loads of complicated things about getting their servants are covered as well in their lands, because some of these peers would be out at sea, like on a mission or something, and who's going to look after their house? And, what if their servants are basically doing their role for them, right? Acting in their place. And then, they've got the lands and so forth. So there's quite a lot of arguments about getting covered by privileges, even just by working for these people who are privileged. And some people, they said they were working for them when they weren't. So they were getting the champity of the privileges when they weren't covered by it, right? The problem is that this is the thing, like with petitioning, we are actually meant to be protected. If you initiate a cause to the Parliament, you are protected to follow that cause, right? Just like a police officer is in a local jurisdiction. There's no argument about that at all whatsoever. Because it says that they'll hear the evidence, when they summon you. So, how the fuck did you get the evidence, right? This is the thing. We're not talking about, appeals or anything like that. Although you're meant to have right of appeal. But, we're arguing now whether or not it even exists or not, whether we've got it. Well, they say, are you really, are you doing what you claim you're doing or not? This is the thing. Well, how do you know whether their servants or not are doing what they say they're doing? Even a guy, we've got a petition here, right? The king's hat maker, he's claiming privileges for him. So the king's chamberlain, right, isn't paying for his hat, right? You got to be taking a piss. The king's chamberlain, he got a hat from a hat maker, a milliner, and he's not paid him the money for the hat. And he can't prosecute him to get the money back because they said that he's protected with privileges, he's a king's servant, right? Now under this, well, I mean, this is like, he owes the person money, Now, in the 1688 Bill of Rights, the right to petition, if you're pursuing a cause, you are protected against, you're meant to be protected against criminal charges. That's why they've got an exemption in the Criminal Damage Act. Why is it privilege in the Criminal Damage Act? If this is nothing to do with criminal, why is there a privileges clause in the Criminal Damage Act? There won't be, would there? It's a Criminal Damage Act. It's nothing to do with civil, but there's a privileges clause in it for sweet God fuck's sake, right? Someone's taking a piss out of us all, right? This is the thing with Extinction Rebellion, right? And in fact, no one has ever, since when has anyone ever referred to police work as privileged or I'm kicking a door down, I'm using police privileges? Never. It's always for usually Parliament, high jurisdiction. So the Criminal Damage Act is a right, privilege or interest. No one ever says the police are exercising privileges when they're racing down the road or doing anything in contravention of the law, or fire officers. It's just called doing their job and they're actually within their rights, or they've got a reasonable excuse or whatever, or whatever. This is like convention rights, reasonable. They won't get charged, but if they did, then that would be like what they're doing with Extinction Rebellion in the court, saying, did you use proportional force to this, crisis or whatever? But it's totally wrong, because political matters are completely different to police and fire and emergencies in local jurisdictions. Matters of church, state and law are completely different. This is why you've got the, control of advertisements. It's just different. You've got a case. But anyway, this now here makes a lot more sense for these petitions that I've been reading, because there are a lot of people getting locked up for civil matters or getting arrested by other citizens for civil matters, not just criminal ones. And obviously if they owed money to the government and not paid it, they got locked up. In fact, in William Penn and William Mead, they got, I think that in that William Penn trial at the Old Bailey, I think they locked the jury up until they paid, that Sam Sterling guy locked him up until they'd paid some money, didn't he? Because they returned not guilty, so he locked them all up. That was a criminal case, but, it's a similar kind of thing. This is 1737, so this makes sense for all these civil cases, or if you owe money to the government or council, not getting locked up. So they stopped this. It looks like they've basically stopped people getting imprisoned for civil matters or debts to the government, right? So it's Parliamentary Privilege Act 1737, but it's anyone. It's anyone, any debtor to the king, right? So you can't. Also, people would also be petitioning Parliament, if they owed money. But that's basically appeal, right? So you aren't really staying proceedings, but they're saying you can't be locked up. So what they're saying is if you owed the government money, right? If you owed the government money and then you got locked up, right, because you haven't paid it, right, then what would you do? Some of these people were getting locked up and they were petitioning Parliament to say, like, I don't owe this person money, or they're lying or whatever, or making a case, can I be let out so I can, prove this or that, which is very similar to what Edward Vaudrey is doing effectively. That is, but it was another... It was like, another party. It wasn't actually the king or the government. It was some other, persons, who charged him, but he was appealing it up. But so that he would have not been in there. Vaudrey wouldn't have been in there, and then he wouldn't. He would be trying to prove he would be trying to prove his case to whichever court, or there's nothing stopping you appealing it, because you can. That's the whole point. You can appeal anything. But our problem is that we have got a case in the first place which aren't being properly recognised from the outset. They're just like nothing legal exists or nothing valid or viable, which is a problem with the Petitions Committee, in which a lot of these lawyers don't get or understand. It's just a person being charged with a crime. It's not an intervention or whatever. So but this is for owing money. So this is, you don't really want to stay proceedings, because a lot of the time you're engaged in proceedings. But that's the thing. If you're locked up, you cannot, do things. You can't go about getting evidence or doing things. This is the thing, right? So what they do now is they come and get your things instead to pay the money or a debt off. They come and take your money or your things off you, right? Okay? So this is all this seizing of vehicles and cars, like with all these ULEZ fines that they're not paying. They don't come and arrest you, do they? They don't arrest you. You're a king. You're His Majesty's government money, but they don't come and arrest you. They come and take your things. Do you see what I mean? So you're getting, this is putting a stop to being arrested for, owing the government money, whether or not, you've done it in court or not, like this, like Rob the RatCatcher guy tried to arrest the justices because he said that they were in contempt of court. So this is really, really quite important. It's actually quite relevant to a lot of these petitions that I'm reading now, because it was different before that, it was different. But there was that James I Act as well, which is what they're actually talking about, that, I just thought it was like a general principle that was from Magna Carta, like that there was a general principle like hue and cry, effectively, that, if you're following a just cause, then, you have to be able to protect it to go about pursuing it, right? and all the things you're doing are allowed for that cause anyway. And all the things that you're doing in connection with it are going to be all heard, addressed, and discussed as part of your case. That's the whole point. And this is the thing that all the lawyers are not doing now with all these ULEZ. They treat them like all these multiple. It's like an arsenal of injunctions on matters that are already their own matters, because Parliament doesn't want to really. I mean, what they do is get Gareth Johnson in, and then like mess him around and take all his time up. Don't take it seriously when they've got 500,000 people signed to petitions. You're not calling people in and have a hearing like they do with Dr. Tess Lowry. She got a hearing. She might have had some evidence. Bristol Council told her to take a banner down from over the M32. That's a parliamentary privilege item under the Control of Advertisements Act. Yet Bristol Council have got God knows what fucking Blackpool illuminations all over the top of their motorway and movie boards all around Bristol. How is that, dangerous or safe? The councillors don't really know what they're doing. Some of these Bristol councillors and mayors, it's mainly the traffic department and these councillors who don't know the law or their legal team. They're just nupties. We've got them here in as local council. They don't know the straw from the they don't know straw from strawberries. They don't really know the law, because they don't have to use it themselves. They don't have to protect or defend themselves or wear the authority. It's all about them. It's not about you. When the Control of Advertisement Acts, they're not trained or schooled in, I'm applying this enactment. What enactment? Well, the enactment that says that, I'm protected and immune because, we're advertising, we've got a case of the Parliament, Oh, what's that? What do you mean, what's that? What does it say on the fucking banner? This is the thing. They called Tess Lowry into Parliament. She sat there in a chair. Why don't you say, oh, by the way, Bristol can't, I've only got 116,000 signatures. Do you know that I could have probably got 200,000 signatures if Bristol Council told me to take my sign down? Can you write a letter to Bristol Council and tell them to, stop, threatening me with letters? This is the thing. They're calling Merlin Sheldrake in. Oh, let's have a nice little tea party in Parliament and call, Merlin Sheldrake in to talk about magic mushrooms or, fungi ecology or whatever, and bring his evidence in, that he's got from wherever, there or everywhere. But when it stopped ULEZ, they're not calling people in. They're not calling Kingsley Hamilton in. They're not calling, Claire Dyer in, or, Matt Hardy Blade Runner, or, Nick Arlett or whoever else, sit there and give evidence, even though they've got 500,000 signatures nearly, or just short of 500,000 signatures, which is like, more than Nigel Farage got when he handed his 300,000 in or whatever to number 11 or whatever. So they're just not doing the job properly. They're not interested. They're just, and this is political parties. Starmer. I just found out that Starmer was engaged in a pro bono case for some people who'd sprayed some paint, climbed a tower and put a political advert on it, right? And this is 2007 when they did that Control of Advertisements Act, which says you can apply the 1688 Bill of Rights. So, I don't know how you can get prosecuted with that. That this was when Starmer was doing it. And then he pulled out of that because they called him, they wanted him to lead the CPS. But Starmer's meant to be this like big time human rights advocate. I don't know what human rights they were teaching them. You should, if he was all over civil rights, why didn't he know about the brand new Control of Advertisements Act? This is the thing. Short of putting Christmas lights up on there, he could say Merry Christmas. This is the thing. And the Starmer's in charge of the Crown Prosecution Service. He's in charge of them, but he's not even, maybe that person who was protesting, maybe they weren't actually fully addressing to Parliament, maybe like, are they covered or not? That's sort of like a very similar type of argument to some of these servants of Parliament and peers. Are they helping or working for barons and lords or not, or are they not? Do they just saying that they are? This is the shampity. Have you got an identifiable, recognisable request to the Parliament to take action on something, or is it some kind of advert to promote it and raise awareness of it so you can get people to support it, or not? This is the thing. This is why, whether it's tenuous or not, how if you've got the signatures and written it out, or if it's published on the Parliament website, how can it be doubted or questioned? Or now, other sites are available, like for 8 Degrees, if they haven't illegally seized and taken, your evidence from you, so you can't give it to Parliament. This is the thing. So this is quite important, really, because this is really important for if you owe money to the government and, people not being put in prison. But you can get Parliament privileges to get out of it, stop it, but you can basically, well, this is what you're doing. You go about what you're going about to do. You do what you're doing. Which is the thing with Stop ULEZ. They are doing what they're doing. They're collecting evidence of public concern. And they're also, those cameras aren't even lawful, so they're actually defending and protecting people against a force which is being employed against them unlawfully. Which then you get in, rights, are using reasonable force against, you can argue that is reasonable force or not, even without a petition, because the government are acting unlawfully, so you don't even need a petition for that. Something's been done against you illegally, so you've got a right to act. This is when, you can argue this whole reasonable force thing or whatever. You don't need a petition, but there are petitions, and you don't really. They're not wanting to use privilege to stay proceedings. This is the thing. Look, what about Roger Hallam? Roger Hallam is in prison. How is he going to prove the cause for this environment thing? He can't do it, can he? But this is a criminal matter, not civil. If it was civil, whatever case it is, how has he got to defend himself if he's locked up? This is the thing. He's been locked up for doing a cause which he's trying to prove, and now he can't prove it because he's locked up. Although he's been giving out all these video updates and discussions and talks and things, but that's no good. This says that he can't be locked up. Because really, Hallam, it's appealing it. Whatever it is, that all the matters, all the things that they've been doing are already their case, their cause. Just kind of a little bit like some of these citizens were arresting people under civil cases and causes. They're arresting them if they owed them money and getting the sheriff to lock them up until they got their court session or whatever. But we've got the case to Parliament, not to a civil court, and no one's actually arresting anyone. Maybe they should. Maybe some of the TfL. Maybe some of the Transport for London staff should be arrested, or some of those bailiffs.